Well, today we're tackling a question that's been a real head-scratcher for scientists. Can a chimpanzee actually get inside the mind of another being?
And we're not just talking about basic smarts here. This goes way deeper into the whole theory of mind thing, being able to grasp it, that someone else has their own thoughts and feelings going on.
Right, it's not just about being intelligent, it's about understanding that others are intelligent too. And to dig into this, we're going back to 1978 with some groundbreaking research by Premack and Woodruff. They set up these really clever experiments with a chimp named Sarah. Now, get this, Sarah was already fluent in a simplified visual language by age 14.
Yeah, Sarah's skills made her perfect for this kind of study. Premack and Woodruff weren't just rehashing that old problem-solving stuff Kohler did back in the 20s, with chimps figuring out puzzles on their own. This was different. They wanted to see if a chimp could understand what another being was trying to do, even when they were struggling.
So picture this. Sarah's watching videos of a human trying to reach some bananas that are, of course, just out of reach. Classic chimp dilemma, right? But here's where it gets really interesting. They presented these scenarios in trickier and trickier ways.
They had four main setups to start. Bananas hanging up high, bananas outside the cage, bananas hidden behind a box, and then, just to make things really challenging, bananas behind a box with those heavy cement blocks on top.
Talk about a chimp obstacle course, but the real test came after each video. They'd show Sarah photos with different solutions. A stick for reaching, a box to stand on. You get the idea. And she had to pick the right one each time.
It's not enough to just connect an object to the problem. She had to understand what the human is actually trying to accomplish to get those bananas.
And get this, she totally aced it. Most of the time, Sarah picked the right solution, which suggests she wasn't just picking pictures at random. She was showing us that she understood what the human was aiming for.
21 out of 24, if you want to be exact.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker. All her mistakes were on those cement block problems. Maybe even chimps underestimate how much work it takes to clear a path before going after what they want.
Maybe she's thinking, dude, just push a little harder. But seriously, how is Sarah doing this? Is she really getting inside that human's head, or is there a simpler explanation?
That is the million-dollar question. Premack and Woodruff considered a few possibilities. The simplest one? Maybe she was just physically matching things.
Like, ooh, there's a box in both pictures. Must be a match.
Exactly. But that theory goes out the window when you look closely at the pictures themselves. All the important stuff, the human, the bananas, the box, they were always there in every single photo, no matter the solution.
So no easy outs for Sarah. She couldn't cheat just by spotting the same objects. Which leads us to the next possibility.
This one's a bit trickier. It's called associationism, meaning maybe Sarah learned certain problem-solving moves through her own experiences, even if the objects were different.
Okay, so even if she's never dealt with boxes and bananas exactly this way before, maybe she's learned that if you need to reach something high up, you find something to stand on. Doesn't matter if it's a box, a rock, or a giant tortoise.
Right. It's a more general kind of learning, but it's got its limits. What about when Sarah comes across something totally new?
Which brings us to the big one, the mind-blowing possibility.
The idea that Sarah actually possesses a theory of mind. This means she's not just matching things up or relying on old tricks. She's attributing mental states, desires, intentions, you name it, to the human in those videos.
She's thinking, that human really wants those bananas. Maybe he needs a longer stick.
Basically, yeah. And that is mind-blowing stuff. But Premack and Woodruff, they didn't stop at bananas. They wanted to see if Sarah could take this understanding beyond simple physical goals. What if the problems were more about what's going on inside the character's head, their internal state?
So we're moving beyond bananas now. What other challenges did they cook up for Sarah? And did her mind-reading skills hold up?
Oh, there's no need to wait. We can dive right into that now.
Even better. Lay it on me. What did Premack and Woodruff do next?
Well, they started showing Sarah these videos that went beyond just, grabbing some tasty treats. One scenario was all about an actor stuck in a locked cage.
So now it's not even about being hungry anymore. It's about understanding what it means to be trapped.
Exactly. They showed her stuff like a heater that wasn't working. That whole shivering in the cold act, trying to figure out the thermostat. And just to see how far she could go. They even had scenarios with a phonograph that was unplugged and a hose that wasn't hooked up.
Right, those things seem pretty basic to us, but for Sarah to get it, she'd have to understand the human's desire to listen to music or their need to use water. It's not just about seeing a problem, it's about getting the why behind it.
Exactly. And what makes Sarah's responses even more interesting is how she learned all this.
Yeah.
They never actually taught her this stuff, like making a big deal out of plugging in the phonograph every day. She just picked it up by watching.
So she's figuring out these cause and effect relationships just from observing. That's some next level learning. But did she actually use that knowledge in these new situations?
She did. And here's the really mind-blowing part. She didn't just choose the general solution. She picked photos that showed the specific state the object needed to be in for it to work.
Okay, give me an example.
Remember that heater problem?
Hmm?
She wasn't just choosing between a lit wick and an unlit one.
Mm-mm.
She had to tell the difference between a wick that was burning, one that was ready to be lit, and one that was already burned out.
Whoa, so it's not just about recognizing what the object is, it's about understanding how it works in that specific situation. She's like a chimpanzee engineer or something. But this whole thing with Sarah understanding intention, it makes me wonder, could her own preferences mess with her choices? Like, what if she just wanted a certain outcome, regardless of what the human was trying to do?
Now, that is a brilliant question. And of course, Premack and Woodruff thought of that too. To test it, they did this experiment with a really cool twist. They added in this whole preference element. They used those same 4 problem-solving scenarios we talked about, reaching for bananas, the box, all that. But now they had 2 different actors. Keith, who was Sarah's favorite trainer, and then Bill, who she didn't know as well.
Okay, so same problems, different dudes. I'm already seeing where this is going. What happened?
Well, the results were pretty wild. When it was Keith struggling in the videos, Sarah almost always picked the photos where he got the bananas, the successful solutions. But when it was Bill, Sarah often chose the ones where he messed up, falling off the box, not reaching the bananas, you name it.
Get out of here. She totally threw Bill under the bus. So does this mean Sarah's got a mischievous streak? Or could this mean she understands social stuff, like playing favorites?
It's tempting to see it that way, right? Like,
Yeah.
she's thinking, Keith deserves those bananas, but Bill, he needs to learn a thing or two. But we got to be careful about putting human emotions onto Sarah.
Right. No anthropomorphizing chimpanzees, no matter how much fun it is. But even if we're being totally objective, this suggests she's got some serious social smarts. Could this mean Sarah understands that some individuals are better at things than others, or that some are just liked more?
It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
And it takes us to an even bigger question. If Sarah can wrap her head around ideas like preference and competence, could she also understand that different beings have totally different levels of knowledge? Like, could she recognize that a kid might approach a problem differently than an adult would?
Whoa. It's like she's taking a crash course in Psychology 101. Did Premack and Woodruff ever look into that?
They did. They showed Sarah videos of a child and an adult both trying to do the same tasks. It was a way to see if she'd treat them differently based on how much experience she thought they had.
So what happened? Did Sarah get that grown-ups are usually better at, say, working a fancy coffee machine or putting together IKEA furniture?
Well, as cool as that would be, this particular experiment didn't really give us a clear answer. There's just too many factors to consider, like how much experience Sarah had with kids in the first place. But it does open up some seriously cool avenues for future research.
So even if we don't know for sure if Sarah understands all the ins and outs of human development, this whole idea of a chimp potentially getting different perspectives is mind-blowing. And it gets even wilder.
Oh, for sure. Premack and Woodruff took this to a whole other level with this brilliantly designed experiment using something they called an embedded videotape.
An embedded videotape. Okay, now you got to break that one down for me. Sounds like something straight out of sci-fi.
Just imagine this. Sarah's watching this video of an observer. Let's call him O. But get this. O is watching a video himself. And in that video, there's a participant, P, who's trying to figure something out. Maybe he's trying to pick the right key to unlock a door or get through a maze, something like that.
Okay, so we've got a chimp watching a human, watching another human. This is already getting good. I can see where this might get a little complicated.
That's exactly what makes it so smart. At a certain point, O, the observer, is shown 2 ways things could go for P. Maybe P nails it, maybe he totally fails, and O has to choose which one he thinks will happen.
So it's like O is betting on whether P will succeed or not, and Sarah's watching all of this go down.
You got it. But here's the truly genius part. This setup forces Sarah to think about what O knows and believes about P. Does O have enough information to guess right? Does he even understand what P is going through?
Wow, so Sarah's not just trying to understand one other mind, she's analyzing a whole chain of knowledge and belief. Did they actually do this embedded videotape experiment with Sarah? What did they find?
And that's where this particular paper leaves us hanging, unfortunately. They tell us all about this embedded videotape idea, but they don't actually describe doing it with Sarah. It's like they gave us a glimpse into this whole new world of possibilities, but then left us wanting more.
Ugh, the research cliffhanger. But that seems to happen a lot in science. Just when you think you're getting close to the answer, a whole bunch of new questions pop up. So where do we go from here? What does this all tell us about how animal minds work? And how did Premack and Woodruff's work change the game for how we think about animal cognition? It's kind of wild to think that a question as simple as, can a chimp understand what someone else is thinking, could lead to such a complex line of research. It really makes you appreciate those scientists, huh?
It really does. And their work, it wasn't just about what chimps could do. It also brought up this really basic debate in animal research.
Mm-hmm.
Behaviorism versus mentalism.
Ah, the classic showdown. Are animals just reacting to things in predictable ways, or is there more to it? Like actual thoughts and feelings behind their actions. So where do Premack and Woodruff's discoveries fit in all this?
Well, they definitely threw a wrench into those purely behaviorist ideas. Remember, behaviorism says we should just focus on what we can see. No guesswork about what's going on in their heads. But you look at Sarah, especially those experiments with Keith and Bill, it's hard not to think there's something more going on than just learned behaviors.
Totally. It's like, yeah, maybe we could explain it without saying she's got a theory of mind, but it just makes more sense the other way.
Exactly. And that's a really important point. Science isn't always about proving something beyond a shadow of a doubt. Sometimes it's about finding the explanation that fits best with what we're seeing. And Premack and Woodruff, they opened up this whole new way of thinking about animal minds.
It's like they gave us these new glasses to look at animal behavior, and suddenly we're seeing all this complexity we didn't even imagine before.
Exactly. And that change in perspective is huge, not just for studying chimpanzees, but for how we think about all other species. It makes us rethink those assumptions we have about animal intelligence, those assumptions that might just be coming from our own limited human point of view.
It's easy to fall into that trap, right? We think, well, I can't just ask an animal what they're thinking, so their inner world can't be that interesting.
But studies like this, they remind us that just because we don't get it doesn't mean there's nothing going on in there.
Yeah.
It just means our own understanding has its limits.
So where does that leave us? It seems like we still don't have a clear-cut answer to the big question, do chimps actually have a theory of mind?
True. But even without that absolute answer, Premack and Woodruff's work totally changed the game. They gave us this framework, these tools and ideas that are still inspiring new research today. They're pushing the boundaries of what we thought we knew about how animals think.
It's like they handed us this map, but instead of leading to some buried treasure, it leads to a deeper understanding of the natural world and our place in it.
Exactly. And that understanding, that's a treasure in itself. Wanting to understand other minds, whether it's another human or a different species altogether, it's a part of what makes us human. It's what drives us to explore and learn.
It really is amazing, isn't it? To think about all that we still don't know, even about creatures that we've shared this planet with for, well, forever. It makes you wonder what other mysteries are out there waiting to be discovered. What other perspectives might we find if we can just learn to see past our own limited view of the world?
Those are the kinds of questions that keep scientists going, keep them curious, and hopefully they'll do the same for all of us.
So to everyone listening, next time you're with an animal, whether it's your pet, some creature out in the wild, or even just a video online, take a second to see the world through their eyes. You might be surprised by what you find, and you might even learn something new about your own capacity for empathy and understanding.